Well, I definitely would not have been able to plan for that if I didn't see what was going on in the chat right before we started the lesson today. I'm hoping some of you caught that reharm of the Halloween theme. That was generous of you, Robert, to call it a reharm. That was more so me trying to remember what it was. It's great to see you guys. Thanks for tuning in to another Playground Sessions lesson. It's been a while. We've been in Bach mode, and so I've been cranking out tutorial lessons for you guys. And we're in the middle of section 3 now. Pretty crazy, right? So we're checking in again today on progress and questions, concerns, hurdles you may be hitting. I know we've been doing this for several weeks in a row now, but each time we check in, there's been new ground covered. You guys have learned more measures. You're trying to put more together. So I wanted to use this as an opportunity for you guys to check in with your teacher. Let me know if you're running into any issues, and we'll talk about it today. Andrew is moderating the chat tonight, so say hey to Andrew, and any questions you have about Prelude in C, he'll be floating up to me. Say hey to Aiden as well. He's back in the house, and he's helping put all this together for today. So I'm excited. We're going to be talking about Bach, but I really love where your guys' spirit is in the chat about Halloween. You can tell I'm in my fallness today, right? And it is October tomorrow. And of course, that means we're going to have some Halloween-type stuff coming up before you know it. In fact, I wonder if anyone's planning on being Bach for Halloween. Let me know. But I would love for us to get more into some Halloween music when we wrap up the Bach stuff, okay? So I'm seeing some people talking about, and we'll just spend a minute or two on this, then we'll get into Bach. But I'm seeing some people talk about Halloween themes, and I see people talking about the Halloween song. And that was my little trying to remember it version. But it's a really cool one, and it's really a defining, you hear that interval in the melody, and you know right away, oh, it's the Halloween theme. And I just wanted to briefly kind of touch on a couple of the classic Halloween riffs and ask you guys in the chat to let me know which ones you'd like to dig into a little bit deeper in the coming weeks as we get closer to Halloween. So the first one's the Halloween theme, and at its essence, it really is this. There's two things that define it for me. One is the interval between those three notes, the intervals. The other is the rhythmic and the meter, the rhythmic pattern and the meter that we're in there. So it's kind of like a 5/8 or a 5/4 figure here. You could think about it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'd be 5/8. But I don't like it like that. I like it 5/4, a bigger 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's because on beat 5, we have that final extra note. 5. All right, I like that. So the rhythm and the meter is one thing. The intervals, it's a minor chord with a flat 6. Now I'll just spend less than 30 seconds on this. I believe this is the starting point in the key. We're in F sharp minor. And any minor chord would work for this, by the way. I'll even put it in C minor. The reason that still sounds like the song, even though I changed keys drastically, in fact, a tritone away, is because of that identifying interval and rhythmic pattern. So you're going to take the 5th of the minor chord and the 1 of the minor chord. So if we're in C minor, you're going to play the 5th of C minor, which is G, and you're going to play the root, or the 1 of C minor, which is C. Now the last part of that is that you're going to play the note just a half step higher than your 5th. Technically it's the flat 6th, but if you just look down at your keyboard, just play a note a half step above. And that's it. Now then they take that and they move it all around in different, I think they drop down a whole step at some point, but it's the same idea. So that's one, the Halloween theme, classic. I would need to brush up on it more too, but if you guys want to dig deeper into that as we approach Halloween, let me know. I was talking with Andrew and Aiden before the lesson, and they also reminded me that Thriller is a really great Halloween jam. Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, little name drop there. You know. It's after midnight, right? C minor. We could, or I'm not sure if it's in C minor. I was jamming on it in C minor. But then we have this really cool chorus. Love that. Very iconic. We could talk more about that. And then Andrew also reminded me of the Monster Mash because it follows a pattern that we often see in jazz music in the chord progression, which is 1-6-2-5. 1, 6, 2, 5. But that's the jazzy way. The Monster Mash way is more like this. The Monster Mash. That's 1. Here's 6, 2, or it could be 4, like, and then we go up to 5. There's a major. He did the Monster Mash. So that's a fun one too. You might also recognize that progression from Heart and Soul. Heart and Soul. Okay, but what we're doing with Monster Mash is we're spreading out the harmonic time by twice as long, or maybe even 4 times as long. So we're on the 1 chord for quite a while. We did a Monster Mash. Now we go to 6. Okay, so briefly, I just wanted to touch on a couple of fun Halloween themes, because I saw you guys were excited about that in the chat. Oh, I'm seeing some people saying Addams Family and all that too. So, let's leave that behind for now, but I want you guys thinking about which one of those riffs you might want to dive into a little deeper in the coming weeks as we approach Halloween. Okay, now, what I want to do is scroll through the chat briefly here, and I want to make sure that you guys are getting your Prelude in C questions and concerns answered. That's what we're here for tonight. So I want to go through and just see if we have some Prelude in C questions and comments, all right? I'm seeing Elta John saying the music is scaring you. Sorry, Elta. It was just pretend. John Sandlin, hey, how you doing? KAAFAA. I'm not sure how you pronounce your channel's name, but it's great to see you. And you're saying Halloween song is Thriller. Yeah. Saul says, sup, Drew? Sup, Aiden? Saul's on just like nickname basis with these guys already. Hey, Saul. Hey, Lily Mae. Lily Mae says she's been working on some projects away from Playground for a while, but you miss everyone. Hey, that's totally cool, man. Lily has given us a great example here. She's a diehard Playgrounder, but sometimes there's value in practicing stuff outside of the app too. Now, you guys who are doing the Prelude in C challenge, you know I've advocated for that in my videos on expression and bringing the music to life. Often that means that the tempo will fluctuate a bit, and so that's one reason why closing your app for a little bit and trying it outside of the app can be helpful. Because in the app, right, we're grading you on metronomic time. And it's super helpful to learn it that way. But when it comes time to bring it to life, I'm exaggerating there a bit, but you can't do that to the metronome. So that's one example. And Lily, I'm glad to hear that you're exploring the outside world of piano as well. I'm just also glad to hear that you're still hanging with us. But you know, let me know, what are you working on outside of the app? I'm just curious, Lily Mae. All right. Okay, so let's get to our first Prelude in C question that I'm seeing here. Kafa from France. Hi, thank you for the clarification. Thanks for joining us. All right, I've got a question from Charles Smith. Charles Smith says, the key change is able to do on the fly. Is it because he thinks in terms of numbers on a given scale? Okay.
I think he's talking about Halloween. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah, because I was mentioning up front that I was kind of playing around with some different versions of the Halloween theme. Someone generously said that it was my reharm. That would imply that I had some intention behind that. But I was more kind of searching for it. But I think the question still applies. I'll spend just a minute on it because I do want to get to Prelude in C. But yeah, basically, Charles, what I was doing with that was, again, I was thinking to myself, what are the core defining elements of the Halloween theme? Okay, and to me, it was the rhythm, bum, 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 and it was the minor chord, the 5 to 1, and then doing the half step above the 5 or the flat 6. So what I did then was just take it to any minor chords that I wanted to, knowing that it probably wasn't correct according to the recording of the Halloween theme. But it was more just me having some fun with it, moving it around to different minor chords. And Charles, to answer your specific question, doing that on the fly is not necessarily because of a given scale, but you're in the right ballpark here. What I was doing there was just moving to different minor chords, kind of unrelatedly, okay? So let's start with C minor. I do have to kind of think of the scale here to understand what my 5, my 1, and my flat 6 are, right? But then where I go next, let's say I want to go here. And then maybe I want to go here. Those are not related by any scales, more so just me randomly picking a new minor chord to apply those two things to. So the rhythmic pattern and the 5, 1, 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1, flat 6, 1. And then just moving it around to some different chords. So I encourage you to experiment with that as well. It's also why I like to refer to things as scale degrees. 5, 1, flat 6, instead of saying G, C, A flat. And that's because if you can understand 5, 1, and flat 6 in a given key, you can move it to any key, and it's the same, okay? Okay, so I have a question here from Barbara Fazio. Barbara asks, will we be able to print it when we're finished? And I assume we're talking about Prelude in C, and the answer is yes. So the plan here is to eventually move what we've done here, these video lessons in this challenge format, in this course tab. Eventually we want to put these videos into the Song Store version of this so that people can eventually, when the challenge is over and no longer live, right, where we're giving you a new one every day, once it's all out there and we've learned it all, we don't want to just get rid of the videos. We want them to live, you know, in the app for longer. So we're going to put them in the Song Store. And at that point, you can print anything from the Song Store. Now, I will say that you can also print that song right now from the Song Store, because we do have this arrangement of Prelude in C already in the Song Store as the advanced level arrangement. So I encourage you to go ahead and print that if you'd like, if you're ready. But if you're asking if you can print an individual segment within the course right now, I'm not sure, Andrew. Is that possible? Or would it have to be in the Song Store format for them to print? Can't print within the course tab. That's what I thought. So I believe Sarah Pickles or Elta, someone from last week, was saying that they had actually printed out a version and that they were writing notes on the printed version. I think that's a great idea. And so if you're looking for a printable version now, I would encourage you to go to the Song Store and download the advanced arrangement. But eventually, when this whole course, this whole challenge version is in the Song Store, I believe you'll be able to print all the breakdown segments from a given day's lesson once it's in that part of the app. Okay, good question. Here's one from Kevin Murray, or Kevin Murray. Is there a quick and easy way to transpose Prelude in C to another key? Prelude in C sharp. That might be tricky for me, but so yes, you can do it, of course. You can transpose anything to a different key. That's one benefit of the modern pianos that we have now, you guys. I don't know the science behind this so well, but the Well-Tempered Clavier, remember, that's the book that Prelude in C first appeared in. That term, Well-Tempered Clavier, is directly referring to the temperament between notes, between the intervals, the half steps on the piano. Now, before that, again, I don't know the science. I'm going to have to follow up with you guys on this. But the frequency and the distance between these notes were not always equal. What we look at when we look at the modern 88-key keyboard today is more or less an equal or well-tempered assortment and intervals between these half steps. But back then, it was not the case that you could take a song in the key of C and play it in the key of E and have it sound the same. Can you imagine? That would have been kind of really weird to wrap my head around, at least. But nowadays, any song in any key on the piano can be transposed to a different key. Sometimes you'll run into other issues like If I transpose it up here, it sounds too high. It doesn't sound as deep. Or if I go too low, it sounds a little muddy. But it is technically possible. And here's how you do it. It's the same as what I was talking about with the Halloween theme. You have to think about things in terms of scale degrees within the key. Then you can apply that to any other key. So we talked about Halloween theme, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1, 1. You have to know what 5 and what 1 is in a given key. But once you do, you can play that in any other key. Name a key. E flat minor. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 5. Okay. Okay, let's do a different key. G. Okay, G minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5, there's 1. That's a simpler version of how to transpose. There's only 2 notes involved, the 5 and the 1. If we're talking about Prelude in C, as you guys are well aware, there's a ton of notes, okay? So you have to do a bit more analysis up front and say, what are the scale degrees that I'm playing in each measure, okay? That's a C major chord. If we're in the key of C, which we know we are, then that's the 1 chord, the C major harmony. That's helpful, we know that. Now we have to talk about how it's voiced. Okay, left hand plays the root, or the 1 scale degree, and the 3rd, that's C and E. So don't think about it as C and E if you want to transpose it. Think about it as root and 3rd. Right hand plays 5th, and then again, root and 3rd. So root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd. Your next step here to transpose would be to pick a different key, wherever you want to move it to, and apply those same numbers and scale degrees to that. So let's move to the key of G, for example, and then we'll move on to another question. Key of G, we need root and 3rd in the left hand. We need 5th, root, and 3rd in the right hand. So let's go to G. Let's refresh our memory on the scale. Key of G. So root and 3rd in the left would mean G and B. 5th, root, and 3rd in the right would mean D, G, B. Let's test it and see if that works. There it is. It sounds lower than we're used to. And again, that was one of the considerations with transposing. If you move it too far, it might start to sound a little different than you're used to. But those notes were correct in that key. And you could identify that song right away if I played it. So that's kind of the shorter answer of how to transpose. You then have to do that for every other note and every other measure. So it would be a transposition challenge. But if you came out on the other side of that, you would be a master of whatever key you've moved it to and the key of C, because it would take a lot of analysis and understanding of the key and the scale degrees. It'll be a fun exercise for sure. All right, let's see here. What else we got? I'm seeing some new names in the chat. Shep473, how you doing, Shep? Shep says, hello, I seem to play by numbers better than letters. Can we get sheet music with numbers? Okay, so this is an interesting question. I believe you're referring to the numbers of the scale degrees, as I was just saying. So instead of looking at the notes and saying, that's C, E, G, C, E, you'd like it to say root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd. That's actually really not a bad idea at all for a certain option of a view in the app. Many of you may know, if you have the Playground Sessions interactive app, that you can toggle between finger number suggestions or letter names. Now the default view, I believe, is finger numbers. So you would see left hand 2, 1, right hand 1, 2, 4. Now that's misleading if we're talking about scale degrees. Don't get confused between those numbers. But you could also toggle to change out those finger numbers, and instead you would see C, E, G, C, E. But it sounds like what you're saying is that a third option could be to say what the scale degrees are within that given chord. I think that's a cool idea. Although you open up a can of worms potentially with that, because we're in the key of C, but every chord we're playing is going to have a different root, 3rd, and 5th, right? Or 7th or 6th. And so then you have to decipher, are we talking about the root of the key of C, which would always be C? Or are we talking about the root of the chord that we're playing, which could be like this one? that could open up a can of worms and create more problems than it's solving. But I think what would really be the most helpful is if you took the letter names that we're providing in the app and you did a bit of your own analysis to come up with your own, whether it's the root, the third, the fifth, or a different scale degree. And it might seem like extra work on your end up front, and maybe it is, but think about your longer term goal. If you could do that on your own and you could write out that stuff for yourself, you will really, really know it. And that's really the ultimate goal, right? Now, if you have questions or challenges when you try and do that for yourself, it really is going to come down to your knowledge of the given scale that we're using in that key. And so I would refer you very strongly to our scales course in the app, because I teach every major scale in our scales course, and I believe we go into 2 octaves and beyond, so you can really get to know each scale. And it is very okay and understandable if you need to refresh your memory on a given scale. The scales course, like many other lessons in the app, is meant to be revisited as often as needed, not necessarily just do it one time, get your green check mark, and never have to review or look back, okay? So I would put it back to you and say, I challenge you to take a measure, or even just a group of 5 notes, and write out your own scale degrees on top of those notes. And if you have trouble with it, refer back to the scales course. Find the scale that we're talking about. Here it would be the C major scale, at least for this chord. And see if you can apply the scale degree numbers to that on your own. Okay, let's keep it moving. I've got a... Okay, here's a good question from Charles Smith about the pedal. All right, this is something that we've talked about a little bit in our expression lesson in the wrap-up of section 1. Let's talk about this. Charles asks, well, first he says, I might be reading a different version than in the app, but it appears that you only change pedal each measure. This is something that we talked about internally as well, Charles. We have a music team full of pianists from different backgrounds, and we definitely sort of polled all of our pianists in-house and asked what their personal preferences were. We also looked at official sources to kind of figure out what's the official word on that. But as I've mentioned before, often when you find music from this time period and before, the composers themselves did not necessarily specify what they wanted in terms of certain details, even like fingering numbers or pedaling or dynamics. Often that stuff was added by the publisher down the road. And so it can be difficult to get a sense of exactly what Bach wanted here. And in fact, don't forget, at the time, there wasn't really the sustain pedal as we know it. So we might actually infer that Bach did not have a pedal technique in mind. So this is really where some personal preference can come into play. But there are some rules. There is a structure here that we should follow. Those rules, briefly, are that you don't want to hold the pedal down too long through changing harmony. So I'll give you an example of that. I'll play measure 1 and measure 2 of notation. I don't think we need to see that on screen. I think you guys know what that is by now. And I'm going to play it with the pedal down the whole time. I'll keep going. I didn't pick the pedal up once there. It didn't sound ugly, like if I were to do this, you know. It didn't sound like clashing wrong notes. However, it sounded very washy. It sounded very almost underwatery a little bit, right? That is not the kind of sound we want to get out of the instrument in general, okay? When we have too many changing harmonies blending together, it can sound a little bit chaotic to our ears, even if the harmony is pretty, okay? So the general rule with the pedal is that if you've got an unchanging harmony, you can keep the pedal down throughout all of it. But when the harmony changes, you have to lift it up, release all the old stuff. And then you can push it back down to collect the new harmony. So as a general rule that could be applied to all piano playing, at least as a starting point, I would say pedal on unchanging harmony, good. Pedal through changing harmony, not good, okay? Now, there are other exceptions to that, like even if the harmony is not changing, if you have a busy rhythmic melody, you You may not want the pedal to go through that like this. Yeah, we got to separate that out so the melody is not so washy, even though the harmony didn't change. But let's put the exceptions to the side for now. We'll talk about general rules. Within Prelude in C, we have an interesting, I don't want to call it a dilemma. It's not a dilemma. We have an interesting situation. We have a full measure where the harmony does not change. However, within each measure, we have two distinct phrases, right? And it doesn't matter if the phrase is exactly the same both times or if it changes. We have two distinct phrases. We have, then we do it again. So the consensus in our internal team of musicians was, interestingly, it was split. Some of our pianists, including classically trained, pianists on our team, not myself included, I was not necessarily classically trained, but they say that they like to lift the pedal up in between the phrases within the measure. So they might do this: pedal down, pedal up and back down again, pedal up and back down again, pedal up and back down again. So even though the harmony is unchanging within a given measure, some of our playground sessions piano experts, we could say, like to do that. They like to lift the pedal in between. Others on our team like to hold the pedal down through the full measure. And I'll show you now. Pedal still down. Now pedal up and back down. We're going to keep it down here. And so it was almost like a 50-50 split in our team. That just goes to show you that more often than not, personal preference can play a role in how you bring your music to life. Okay. What I will say, though, Charles, is that I would not encourage you to hold the pedal down beyond one measure. And that is because, sure enough, right, we all know by now the harmony changes each measure. So I would get into the habit of, at the very least, changing pedals between each measure. But then I would ask you to experiment on your end and once again, listen to the sounds that are coming out of your instrument and react to them. What do you like? What sounds better to you? And lean into that, okay? I'll leave it there for now, but if you have any other pedaling questions, you guys, let me know. We could even talk a bit more about some of the advanced subtleties with the pedal. I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I've found through teaching this song that I actually like to lift the pedal up. Should I open this can of worms? I like to lift the pedal up on my second note in the left hand when I get to the new measure. And the reason I do that instead of doing it on the first note is so that my last right hand melody note of the measure before doesn't get cut off. All right, check this out. If I lift it up for there, what you hear is this. And it almost makes that last note sound a little bit staccato or detached. Now watch what happens if I keep the pedal down into the first note on the left hand, and then when I get to my second left hand note, I'll lift it up. Listen specifically to what that top right hand note sounds like as I go into the next measure. It's subtle, but it lingered on into the next measure just a little bit, which made it sort of have a smoother transition. But I picked up the pedal when I got to my second note so that I couldn't collect too much of the new harmony and therefore sounding really washy, right? But again, don't worry about that if that feels too much for you to consider right now. Those are subtle approaches that you can do at a more advanced level that arguably can make the piece feel better as you're performing it, but by no means is it necessary for those of you learning this piece that feel like that's too tough. So let's move on from pedal, but great question, Charles. I want to get to a question from Ka-Fa, because that's a new name in the chat for me tonight, and I want to make sure I get to your question. Thanks for writing in. So Ka-Fa is asking, when you play, is your brain thinking each name, the name of each note that I play? Or am I just seeing the position of the note? Okay, great question. This is going to depend on what exactly I'm playing. Sometimes I could be playing something that is really scale-based. You know, I'm going to make this up. There's not really a position or a shape that would outline what I just did with my right hand there. So in that instance, I would be thinking about each note, and I wouldn't be thinking about the names of the notes, but I would definitely be thinking about the scale that encompasses all of those individual notes. Now, if we're talking about playing something instead, more like Prelude in C, and Ka-Fa, let me know, are you actually actively doing the Prelude in C challenge right now with us? Or are you not a Playground Sessions subscriber yet, and you haven't tried this yet? Let me know. But in a piece like Prelude in C, it is very, very much based on a chord shape and or a hand position. And we know after going through these lessons that if we can see each measure in Prelude in C, each measure's worth of notes, if we can see each measure's worth of notes as one position or one shape, we're going to be able to memorize it much easier and therefore be able to call up our memory of it and play it with more ease, right? So the more we can zoom out and see these things as shapes, the better it is for us as performers, as students of this stuff. So in Prelude in C, Ka-Fa, I am 100% thinking about the chord shapes. I'm thinking about this, and then this, and then that, and then that. And in the beginning, when learning that, it may very well be helpful to you to think about those individual notes, C, E, G, C, E. But once you learn it and you're practicing it and you're practicing it over and over again and you're trying to memorize it, I would highly encourage you to think about this as a shape, one position, boom. Within that shape, there's a rhythmic pattern that you would learn and apply, which is. But if you were to think about all 16 of those notes, there are 16? Yeah. As individual notes, there'd be a whole lot to think about, right? If you think about it as one shape with a rhythmic pattern, that's like one thing to think about, okay? So to answer your question, with Prelude in C, my brain thinks about the position, but in other songs, it may not be the case. It depends on the piece of music and how it's voiced and arranged. Thanks for writing in. Hope to see you in future streams. Thanks for joining. All right, let's see here. I want to get to Sarah Pickle's question. Sarah says, I'm struggling with the end, ACF. The left hand sucks. What happened to the pattern? All right, Sarah, I want to make sure I'm understanding. The end of what? Are we talking about the end of what came today? I believe the end of today's lesson was measure 9 and 10. And so I'm going to.
She means the very end of the piece, like the last line.
The very end of the piece. So you looked ahead, and you're talking about the right-hand portion where the pattern changes. That makes sense if you're talking about what happened to the pattern. So, oh, that's right. That's right. Sarah, you looked ahead because you are not learning in the app. That's okay. But it's not. But it is. So you looked ahead to the end, and you're absolutely right, Sarah. Now, I don't want anyone to get intimidated or scared when I say this, but the final 3 measures of this piece, which we haven't got to yet in the app, we do deviate from that pattern. I'm going to try and recall it from memory here, but we end up doing something more like this at the end. Nailed it. That's a very different pattern than we're used to, right? Unfortunately, we cannot apply that same left, left, right, 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 and then the right hand 3 again. We can do it all the way through. I believe it's measure 32. All the way through measure 32, the pattern is the same. 33 and 34, we change. So, Elta, oh, wait a minute. No, it was Sarah. Sarah, you're struggling with the end, completely understandable. What I'm going to tell you is this, Sarah. If you join the app and you take our instruction, you take these video lessons as we serve them up to you, I promise you'll be able to handle it when we get there. But if you want to do it on your own, That's your call. Good luck. I'm just messing with you, Sarah. I'm always happy to help. But I don't want to break down that part just yet because everyone else in the chat, we're not quite there yet, okay? So stick around, be patient. When we get to that point in the app, in this challenge, I'll break it down in more detail. But I'll tell you this, it's a much trickier part in the right hand. Do not teach yourself the wrong thing by trying to guess it. Instead, Sarah, I would encourage you to check out a video on YouTube or Google it or something, whatever you do when you don't have the Playground Sessions app, okay? And if you still have trouble with it, I'd be happy to help you when we get there on our end. All right, let's keep things moving here. Here's a question from T. Michelle. T. Michelle asks, can you ask him to play a few bars of Now We Are Free from Gladiator? I don't think I know that. He can ask me, but I will not be able to play that. Yeah, maybe next time. T. Michelle, let me remind you that we have a song request form where anyone, Playground Sessions member or not, I believe, or do you have to be a Playground Sessions member?
No, you don't have to be.
I think it's just a browser, like a tab on the website, or user voice, that's what it is, thank you. You can request any song that you'd like us to put in the app, and if other students like yourself want to see that song in the app too, they can add their vote too, and it'll upvote it. It's pretty cool, and the ones that are the most often upvoted to the top are the ones that we can see then that you guys really want it, right? So we can prioritize it, assuming we have the rights for it and all that. Thank you for the request. Sorry I cannot fulfill it right now, T. Michelle. All right, here's one from Mi Pueblo. Mi Pueblo says, when a piano has 3 pedals, what do they all do? All right, so this is a good question. And I'll go into this because we just were talking about the pedal quite a bit for Prelude in C, right? So to be clear, when I'm talking about the pedal, and generally when you hear someone just say the pedal, they're talking about the one on the right. That's kind of the most commonly used pedal. And in fact, on keyboards, if you only have one input for one pedal, it will serve the function of that same pedal, the one on the right of the piano. That one is called the sustain pedal, okay? The sustain pedal is the one that's all the way on the right. That's what I was referring to in terms of pedal technique for Prelude in C. That pedal does what the name suggests. It sustains the sounds that you play while you're holding down that pedal. So I've got my pedal down right now. All of those notes are sustaining until I lift my pedal up like this. Then they stop. So most of us know that. That's the sustain pedal on the right. The pedal on the way left, typically referred to as the soft pedal. The soft pedal, the shorthand way of talking about that is that it kind of mutes the sound a little bit and it makes things a little bit quieter. But I can tell you a little bit about what's actually happening on a real piano when you use that pedal. If you can imagine the inside of a pedal, you have your strings. Remember, every key on the piano is actually a string. It's a string instrument, right? There's strings inside the piano. And then we have hammers that are attached to each of the piano keys. The hammers hit the strings. That's how we get a sound. So if you hit it quietly, the hammer's hitting the string softly and makes a quieter sound. If you hit it hard, the hammer really hits the string, makes it loud. Keyboards imitate that effect, but obviously there's no strings or hammers here. But on a piano, the soft pedal, what it does is it shifts the hammer, I don't know if it's called the hammer board, the piece that all the hammers are connected to, okay? It shifts it a little bit to one side. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but every key is attached to a hammer that hits a string, but it's not just one string. Every key actually has, for the most part, 3 strings, sometimes 2 or 1, depending on, if you're getting out to the extreme edges of the piano. But for the most part, you have 3 strings per note. And this helps make it sound sort of warm and rounded instead of just a single string. So when I play this note on a piano, sounds like one note. It's actually hitting 3 G strings at the same time, okay? When you use the soft pedal, it shifts the hammers over so that they only hit 2 or partial partial amounts of the strings. If you have a 3-string note, it might hit 1 or 2 of those strings. Okay? So it's going to come to the side and hit it in a way that's not going to give it its full resonance, its full sound. And so functionally, you might use the soft pedal when you want to play something really sort of quieter and muted. It also gives it a bit of a darker tone. And then when you want to get louder and brighten things up, get rid of that pedal. Okay? Now play more fully. So that's sort of briefly what the soft pedal is. The middle pedal is actually an interesting one because I've seen some pianos where the middle pedal does different things. But for the most part, I believe the intention of the middle pedal is to act sort of like a sustain pedal for a portion of the range of the keyboard. And what I mean by that is, if you think of the sort of the left half of your keyboard as being the area where you would supply some harmony, and then the right side of the keyboard being where you might have a flourishing melody, sometimes you're limited, right? If you use your full sustain pedal, which is the one that's all the way on the right, that sustains every single note if you play it. So if you wanted to do something like this, and sustain that, and then come up here and do something like, which would be not sustained, you can't do that, right? You would either have to hold this down the whole time, and then play all that with your right hand, which would be tough, or you would have to do this, sustain, and then let go of the sustain, which you don't want either. So I believe that the intention of the sostenuto pedal in the middle is to allow you to sustain the harmony portion of what you're doing. Yeah, right. Press it, hold it. Oh, that's what it is. So, and that's true for the whole range?
Yeah.
Ah, I just learned something from Andrew, who's a trombonist and a drummer.
I just looked it up.
That's sweet. Oh, he looked it up. So that's helpful. So I was wrong about that. It's not just about the left side versus the right. Or maybe I've seen a piano like that, but it sounds like the traditional use of this is you play something which you're holding down, and if you think about the back of the keyboard when you're doing that, those 3 notes that I'm playing, those hammers would be up. They hit the string and they're still sort of halfway up. When I let go of the key, the hammer would fall back. So if I do this, no sustain pedal, only those 3 hammers are up. Then if I hit the sostenuto pedal, only those 3 notes will remain sustained, but the remaining notes will not be sustained. So, and that actually gives you even more options than the scenario I described, because you could hold something here and here, push your sostenuto pedal down, and then come in here and do something like, while those are sustaining. So that's pretty cool. Essentially, it's like an extension it allows you to hold something down while doing something else that's not being held. It gives you more options of what you can do with your 2 hands. That was a longer answer than I meant to give there, but I hope that was helpful. That's all. Oh, yes, John Sandelin just reaffirmed that I was at least partially right, because, yeah, I think some pianos, I think so, yeah. I think the middle pedal, sometimes they just kind of treat it as a half sustain, which would allow you to kind of do the sustained harmony and then staccato melody, for example. But other pianos, maybe the true, maybe the best pianos, whatever, that's, I think, how they're supposed to work, as Andrew just clarified for me. So, all right, was that Mi Pueblo's question? Yeah. Thanks for writing in. I hope that helped, and I hope to see you again here in the chat. Okay, guys, it's 6:45. I totally forgot to give you guys the opportunity to win a song credit, but we still got some time, so we're going to jump into a pop quiz number 1. Pop quiz 1. And what we're going to be doing for pop quiz number 1 is talking about something that was introduced today. We're going to be talking about the newest lesson from today's entry in the Prelude in C challenge, okay? Now, today, for intermediate and advanced players, obviously you got a new set of measures than the rookie players did. So I'm going to ask a question that no matter what your level is, you'll be able to, we'll all be on the same page. And I believe rookies today practiced both measures 9 and measure 10. And so I have a question about measure 10. Whoever gets this right, I'm looking for the first correct answer, gets a free song credit for the Playground Sessions interactive app. Measure 10. What is the name of the, let's see, how can I phrase this for you guys? How many right hand notes do we see? This is not the question. In the right hand, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 12 notes in the treble staff in measure 10. I need you guys to name the 11th note in the right hand that we see. Give me the name of that note. It's a little trickier than you might think at first glance, you guys. That's the only hint I'm going to give. But I need to know the name of that note. What is the 11th note we play in the right hand in measure 10? I'm looking for the first correct answer. And I know you guys can do it. In the meantime, I'm just going to jam a little bit here on Prelude in C. I want to see everybody in the chat. I know you can do it. If you need to open up the app, you're welcome to. However, you're probably going to be left in the dust. I see Barbara Fazio saying it's all about using the app. The people that produce it deserve a lot of kudos. I love it. Barbara, thank you so much. That's really great to hear. We do work pretty hard on giving you guys good content in the app. And we're actually working pretty hard right now as well on updating the app in a lot of ways. We are really excited about that, and I'm sure that you guys are as well. I'm trying to play and talk, so forgive my mistakes here, guys, but I'm looking for an answer, and I haven't seen one yet in the chat. You guys still there? Anybody want a free song credit? I'm going to play Prelude in D. I'm going to test my transposition here while I let you guys get a little more time to answer. There are 12 notes that the right hand plays in measure 10. I'm looking for the name of the 11th note. Anybody know it? I'll give you another minute or two, and if no one knows it, then Andrew gets a free song credit. Andrew, just email Andrew at support, attention Andrew, okay? Exactly. All right, Prelude in D. Let's see if I can do this. This one's for Charles Smith, a little transposition. Here comes my favorite, the major 7 chord. Dropping down to the minor 6. It's almost jazzy. You guys, I don't see any comments. Maybe that one was too hard.
Someone said 3.
3? That is not... Wait, I don't even see that comment. Am I missing comments? Let me try and refresh this here, because maybe for some reason I've lost my comment feed. Okay, I'm going to try and refresh this for you guys because I'm not seeing it on my end. So give me just a second here, and I'm going to play while I do it. Interesting. All right, I'm going to pop out this chat one more time. Cool, cool, cool.
I got a winner.
Well, I don't see it, but Andrew is telling me that he has a winner. And that's a bummer that I can't see it, but that's okay. Andrew, who got our pop quiz number 1 correct?
Elton John.
Elton John! Pew, 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 in the house! Okay, so the correct answer was...
F sharp.
F sharp. Did anyone say F?
Yes.
Okay, that was the trick for this question. So you can come back to me here, Aiden, because I want to just explain for a minute what happened here, okay? It does appear to be an F. If you used your mnemonics for figuring out what note that was on the staff, you would have used the spaces one, which is face, and the first space would be F, right? We're in the key of C, so the key signature does not say anything about F sharp or other sharps, right? So why is the answer F sharp and not F? Well, I intended to trick you guys a little bit here. I wanted to make sure that you understood this notion that when you see a sharp or a flat, or a natural for that matter, in a measure on a given note, every other note that is the same note within that measure also has that accidental symbol applied to it. Let me say that again. Maybe that wasn't very clear. We see an F sharp at the beginning of measure 10 in the right hand. Right? That F sharp, that sharp symbol in front of that F applies to all the rest of the Fs in that measure. So I didn't mean to mislead you or trick you, but I did want to make sure that we were considering not only what that note looks like on its own, but also thinking about it in the larger context, okay? So the correct answer is F sharp because we see a sharp on an F earlier in that measure. Did anyone else get F sharp, Andrew?
Let's see.
I'm sorry, I can't see the comments from you guys.
Elton John said F sharp twice.
Well, you only get one free song credit, Elta. But
And then Iman said G flat. Iman Boyle.
Interesting. Iman Boyle said G flat. The note on the keyboard, Iman, if you were to look down and say, what is this note? You wouldn't be wrong that if you were to play a G flat, it would be this note. However, it is very important to consider, again, the context here. We don't see a G flat in a D major chord. And maybe it's not clear that that's a D major chord, but D major chord is spelled D, F sharp, A. And so that's probably why we're seeing it written that way instead of G flat. Also, it is a triad after all. D major triad, D, F sharp, A. We want to have these letters represented in that way where it feels like 1, 3, 5. So D, E, F, G, A. Even if it's an F sharp, we still say F when we refer to it, F sharp. If we were to call that D, G flat, A, it might appear to be more like a 1, 4, 5 type of chord. Whoa! My chat is blowing up, you guys. Maybe my internet just kicked back on or something. But I'm seeing a million chats come through now. That makes me happy. I thought you guys ghosted me for a minute. Okay, cool. Sorry, Iman. So the reason I want to just call that out is because it can be confusing. You look down and you say F sharp or G flat, it's the same, who cares? In some ways, yes, you could argue that they're the same functionally. But when we're thinking about things as scale degrees, when we're talking about transposing and analyzing harmony, it's really, really important that we spell notes correctly. I know that might be a funny thing to think about, spelling notes. But that's kind of how we talk about it. Do we spell this note as an F sharp or a G flat? It all depends on the context. This note could very well be written as G flat in a different piece, in a different setting. It just depends. But since this is a D harmony here in this measure, it's a D major triad, we need to think about that like 1, 3, 5 in the key of D, which would be D, D, E, F sharp, A, G. 1, 3, 5. I hope that helps. Okay. Now, I don't want to look at myself. That messes me up. Here we go. Let's see if I can answer one more question. I'm going to flip through the chat here. Oh, it looks like a few people were missing the chat messages. Interesting. Robert said, come on, guys, guess something. I think people were guessing, but maybe the chat kind of got paused for a minute. Boo technology. Boo YouTube. Let's see. John Sandlin. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Well, it's 6:55, you guys. I don't see any other questions right now about Prelude in C, so I'm going to say this. I'm going to see you guys next week again. We're going to be wrapped up with section 3 by next week. So we're going to check in again, Prelude in C style. I'm going to answer any questions you may have about putting section 3 together, putting it all together, section 2 and 3, or even section 1, 2, and 3. We're going to talk about that again. But I want you guys thinking about Halloween music, okay, because it's about that time. And next week, maybe we can spend another 5-6 minutes having some more Halloween theme fun as well. Congratulations on today's free song credit winner. Congratulations to all of you for crushing Bach's Prelude in C. I know you guys are working your way through it still, but we've made a lot of progress. It's pretty much been a full month now that we've been working towards this goal. I'm really proud of you guys. This has been fun, and we're not done yet. So I will see you guys next week, 6 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, here on the Playground Sessions YouTube channel. See you then.